Did you ever think that you might be able to learn some lessons from a kids movie? Well, recently my family and we typically like to do family movie nights on occasion. We learned some pretty interesting lessons from watching a 31-year-old movie, 1994's Richie Rich. I'm not going to go into the full details of the movie or anything like that. Feel free to watch it if you'd like, but I really want to hone in on some of the key things that we saw as some different takeaways. One of the first ones that we thought was really kind of funny is that Richie Rich and his dad actually had what we would consider the world's first FaceTime. With the dad locator, Richie was able to locate his dad virtually anywhere on the globe and have two-way communication with him via video. Pretty much a first for its time. Separately, we know that a lot of this was possible because Richie's family had a significant fortune. Richie's dad and his family had really used a lot of their value creation for good. He built new factories to help support a lot of the products that his family had developed. He created a lot of value for others in that he was able to help expand different products into the market and help solve problems that existed. By creating this value for others, it was really a mentality that we saw that could be employed across really any situation. So let's jump into one of the first lessons that we as a family had as a takeaway that I think really applies to some of the things that I like to talk about on this channel. And the first of which is that Richie's dad really was a value creator, meaning that he created a lot of products and solved a lot of problems for people in that quote unquote world that they had. And he built new factories. He set up and employed many people in the different communities in which those factories existed. And his mentality is really one of the same that perhaps we should all seek to employ, and one that we kind of talked about as a family, in that we can create value for others and be able to grow our earnings in the process. And these are really kind of the basics or some of the basic underpinnings of what true capitalism is, in that when we create value for other people and we seek to help others, we generate or create opportunities in which we can earn a living and benefit other people at the same time. Over time, that continues to perpetuate and grow. And that's one of the things that we saw taking place within the movie. Another item that was very much at play, and one that kind of stood out and even created some further discussion, was inflation. And although it's not necessarily spelled out, one of the things that was brought up as we were talking as a family was, what was the rich family's fortune worth in today's dollars, so to speak? At that time in 1994, it was stated in the movie that they were worth somewhere near $70 billion. Well, if we were to use current, kind of fast forward that today, that's the equivalent of about $153 billion. Now, I think it's really important to highlight that in this situation, it's not that that money is worth more in today's dollars, but in fact, what we see happening in that situation is that there's a 54% erosion in the purchasing power. So to get the equivalent of what the rich family had in that 1994 dollar situation of 70 billion, they would have to have the equivalent today of $153 billion. And that's just frankly astounding to see that level of erosion take place in just a 31-year time frame. Now, if we want to take that back a little bit further and we want to look at what would the rich family fortune be if it was in 1912 dollars, prior to a lot of this erosion of purchasing power that took place after the Federal Reserve was instituted in 1913, that family fortune back then would only be about $4.6 billion. Granted, it's still a lot of money, so I'm not trying to downplay this in any way, but it's important to kind of think about what that is in terms of inflationary loss. Is it's a 97% erosion of purchasing power. And frankly, that's not something that's fun to talk about, but it spurs on conversations about how we can avoid that and how our kids can avoid that going forward in the future. And we'll talk a little bit more about that to come. Another item that came up was that we clearly saw in many situations, and it was on display, Richie's dad created a lot of assets that allowed them to be paid and live the life that they had. He had created companies from the products that he generated and created. He had lots of different value that was created in the open market. And additionally, they kept the vast majority of that wealth, so to speak, within their own system by continuing to reinvest in new opportunities. They kept reinvesting in the family, so to speak. And that helped them to continue to build on that overall success. Another item that we see is that the villain, so to speak, in this movie is really kind of a representation of what's wrong in a lot of corporate America today, in that he didn't necessarily build or create value for anyone. He wanted to steal and kind of ride on the coattails of what others created and then try to take it for himself. One of the things that really highlighted this for us as we were watching is when they get into the vault and they finally open the Rich family vault, and the villain's in there and he's looking around and he's trying to discover where the fortune is, where all the money is at. And what they find is actually something that was really quite eye-opening and in a lot of ways really comforting. The reason that it felt that way is to that person, it was a bunch of junk. In reality, though, to the Rich family, it was a lot of memories. It was truly about family, and it was truly about what makes family family. And that's what we saw within that particular scene of the movie, where one person only views what's valuable and important through the lens of money, whereas this family truly didn't value that money, so to speak. The value was in them as a family unit. And I thought that was a really neat and inspiring kind of takeaway from the film in that section. Additionally, that just kind of opened up some other conversations that we had as a family, which I thought were really positive, and wanted to be able to share that with you. Some of the takeaways that we had as a discussion as a family, I felt might be really valuable for you, the listener on this channel. And one of the things that I wanted to be able to share was, how can you start creating wealth with what you do? So I came up with a couple of different items to kind of think differently about how you can begin to generate your own system, kind of like the Rich family, and begin to develop that. And the first of those is creating a system of that you own and control, in which you can start to retain a lot more of what you earn. And that starts with controlling the banking function in your life. So I would highly recommend getting a copy of Nelson Nash's Becoming Your Own Banker, or perhaps taking a look at the multi-part series that we have on the Perfect Spiral Capital channel, in educating yourself about the banking function, to observe ways that you might be able to start taking that system back in control of your own life. By implementing the infinite banking concept, you are actually beginning the process of implementing an asset or an income generating asset that will start to create income for you over time. Secondly, I would encourage you to start observing ways in which you can provide value to other people. What are some ways that you can create value that might even be able to be monetized? So many people out there have great ideas. Very few people act on them. And by acting, I mean, don't be afraid to fail. Actually take a step forward. Try to put it forward. Try to implement it. And if you fail, that's fine, but fail forward and learn from it and understand how to take that next step, maybe a little bit more effectively the next time. Or even better, I would highly recommend finding some mentors and people who you can kind of network with that are going to help you to be able to take that next step forward. It's a great way to be able to build a great support network, and at the same time, maybe even have people to kind of beta test some of your new ideas that you have. Thirdly, if we have begun to properly capitalize our infinite banking concept platform in our own lives, we can deploy that capital to start to expand our value creation to other people. So maybe once we've gone through and we've vetted out what we want to do to create that value for others, we can then use that capital we're starting to generate by retaking the banking function and be able to start to deploy it in a way that could have multiples of return as that business idea continues to grow and excel. It's a great way to be able to begin to make that work for you and your family. Another way to think about it might be, what other assets, maybe you don't necessarily have an idea right at the moment, but maybe you could go out and start purchasing or acquiring an income generating asset with the capital that you've begun to accumulate, and start generating some income that way. That's a great way to be able to, again, start perpetuating that system for you. And I don't want people to think that this is only for people like Richie Rich. It certainly isn't. This is for the you and me level. This is at the average Joe level where anyone can start to implement this process. They can start to take back that banking function and start to systematically grow and build capital. From there, who knows, maybe you and your family might become the next rich family. It just takes an effort. It takes some time. And more importantly than anything else, it takes starting and taking that step forward. So I would encourage you, the next time you are doing a family movie night, maybe take some time and really observe what's going on in the movie. Are there some lessons here that we can learn? As I mentioned, these are some steps that you can start moving your family in a positive direction. If you'd like to talk more about it, feel free to get in touch with me. Leave a comment, get in touch with me via the links in this channel, in the show notes. Otherwise, feel free to reach out via perfectspiralcapital.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. In any case, thanks for listening today, and we'll talk to you again soon.